Okay, good. We're on 2 Corinthians chapter 12. We're starting at verse 11. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to finish out the last of 2 Corinthians, because we're doing actually a study in time, and we actually are in Acts. And so we're going to go back to Acts and see where Paul is and what he's been doing. But let's finish out 2 Corinthians chapter 12, starting at verse 11. It says, I have made a fool of myself. Now, why do you say that? Paul, why do you say that? He says, I've made a fool of myself, but you drove me. Remember what we were talking about last time that Paul did not like to do? He felt like he was boasting, right? Remember he talked about all of the ways that he had suffered for Christ. You know, have we ever heard anywhere else about his suffering for Christ? That's right. To introduce himself by bragging. It feels like he's bragging. And so he's saying to the Corinthians, he's saying, I've made a fool of myself because I went and talked about all this stuff that I don't like to talk about, but you drove me to it. I ought to have been commended to you, but I'm not in the least inferior to the super apostles. Notice the super apostles are in quotes. Now, who would be a super apostle? What about Peter? Peter's still around. We believe that Peter did visit Corinth. So Peter could have been one. You know why we think Peter visited? Because when they were saying they belonged to, there were some who say they belonged to Apollos, some belonged to Paul, and some belonged to Peter was the other one. And so we believe that Peter did visit Corinth. So those would be who would be the super apostle? Apollos? No, because Apollos wasn't there when Christ was around, right? The super apostles were the ones that were the apostles when Christ was there and they were following him. Was Paul